The first thing I remember is the beeping. It was slow, mechanical, a heart monitor maybe, but it wasn't mine that was being tracked. It was silence that screamed loudest in that white hospital room. I blinked against the glare of the ceiling light. My throat burned, my arms ached. I could feel the raw tug of the IV in one arm and the cold weight of emptiness in the other. Where was my baby Evelyn? A nurse's voice drifted through the fog. You're awake. Just lie still, okay? Still my baby. I had gone under anesthesia for an emergency C-section. The last thing I remembered was gripping Jonathan's hand as they wheeled me away, promising me he'd be waiting, that we'd hold our son together. Where is he? My voice was a croak, barely air. The nurse hesitated. Her mouth moved, but I didn't hear the words. My ears were filled with rushing wind like the ocean in a shell. She touched my hand. I pulled away. What happened? I demanded. Where's my son? Then came the words, I'm so sorry, Mrs. Carter. There were complications. The baby didn't make it. The ceiling swayed. My lungs forgot how to breathe. No, I whispered, no, that's not right. I need to see him. I want to hold him, but they just looked at me with that carefully neutral face, the one people wear when they're trained to avoid lawsuits. He's already been taken care of. Taken care of. I never signed anything. I said, panic clawing its way up my spine. I never consented to that, Jonathan. Where is Jonathan? Your husband stepped out earlier. He's grieving too. No, that man didn't grieve. Not like this, not in silence. And Jonathan Carter never ran from a photo opportunity, let alone the birth or supposed death of his firstborn son. My gut twisted. Something was wrong, colossally wrong. They kept me sedated for another day, claiming I needed emotional regulation support, but I knew what they were really doing, keeping me quiet, keeping me numb. When I was finally deemed stable enough to be discharged, Jonathan wheeled me to the car in silence. He didn't hold my hand. He didn't speak, not even when I asked if we could visit the cemetery. I needed closure, a headstone, a funeral, anything. There wasn't one, he muttered. It was handled privately. I didn't want to upset you more. What does that mean? It means it's over. Evelyn, let it go, let it go. Had carried our son for 9 months. I knew every kick, every hiccup I had sung to him, whispered dreams into his forming ears. My body remembered him, and it remembered that he had not died because I never saw him, never touched him, and I never gave permission for them to take him away. Something deeper than grief grew in me then. It was fire. Back home, if you could call that mansion a home anymore, I was isolated. My in-laws came by giving me those condescending pats on the back. Jonathan's mother, Margaret, even said, maybe it's for the best. Children change everything. Her eyes were too dry to have cried. That's when I knew something was off, that my son hadn't died. Not truly, he had been taken, and everyone around me was in on it. My paranoia bloomed like blood under skin. I began digging quietly at night. I searched our mail, rifled through hospital discharge summaries, insurance claims. Everything had been scrubbed clean. But then, deep inside a folder that had been sealed, misfiled under Margaret's name, I found it. A consent for neonatal transfer signed. In my name only. It wasn't my signature. The E in Evelyn was too sharp. The C in Carter curled the wrong way. I had been forging my own checks long enough in boarding school to spot a fake. I took a photo of the form and hid it inside a book. No one would touch a theology text from my late father-in-law. Then I flushed the original down the toilet in case anyone was watching me. From that night on, I pretended to grieve, pretended to forgive, pretended I was healing, but inside I was plotting. My first real ally came from an unexpected place, Melissa Green, a nurse from my delivery ward. She reached out via anonymous email 2 weeks later with just one sentence. You were right. The baby lived. I met her in a parking garage downtown. She looked over her shoulder like we were in a spy movie. I could lose my license for this, she said. But what they did to you, it's criminal. She handed me a USB drive. Inside were documents the hospital had buried, internal memos, name redactions, timestamps that didn't match, and a delivery log that showed my son had been alive when he was taken. He was transferred out under a private order, Melissa said, to a family in New Haven. That's all I could trace before they locked me out of the system. A private transfer, not adoption, not a state agency, a family, someone who had the power to erase me. Thank you, I told her, barely able to keep my hands from shaking. You've just given me a reason to breathe again. She nodded. I hope you find him. I looked out at the horizon at the sun rising over the city skyline. I will, I said. And then they took everything, but I'm going to take it back piece by piece. There's a kind of quiet that doesn't heal you. It kills you slowly by making you forget that you were ever sane. I was committed to Willow Grove Mental Health Facility 2 weeks after confronting Jonathan about the forged signature. His mother and a court-appointed doctor claimed I was suffering from delusional postpartum psychosis, a condition they painted so precisely, so clinically that the judge barely blinked when he signed the order. I was stripped of my phone, my legal rights, my voice, but not my memory. No one could erase that. They locked me in a room with soft walls and a hard truth. I was being silenced legally and medically. No one wanted Evelyn Carter asking questions, especially not when those questions came with forged forms and hospital irregularities. They told me I'd thank them one day, that I needed stability, that I should focus on healing, but I wasn't broken, I was betrayed. I remember the first night vividly. A nurse came in with a paper cup of pills. I asked, "What are these?" She smiled, "Just something to help you sleep." I swallowed them, then I stayed awake. I spent hours staring at the ceiling, replaying everything, the delivery, the blank space, the lie. Melissa's USB was gone, of course, confiscated for security. But I remembered enough, the files, the names, the initials on the log sheet, TMI, etched them into the edge of my mattress with a hairpin. By week 2, I stopped asking to call anyone. They said she's stabilizing. By week 4, I asked to start reading. They gave me a Bible and a book on grief. By week 6, I asked for Black's Law Dictionary. They hesitated. Then a young orderly named Jamie, barely 22, still green, snuck it in with a shrug. "You look like you're planning something," he said, smirking. I smiled back. "I'm planning everything." At first, it was just definitions, custody, fraud, emancipation. Then came the structure, legal standing chain of custody, statutory rights. I began borrowing textbooks from the facility library. Jamie helped me get access to case law printouts. I didn't speak much in group therapy. They thought it was a sign of withdrawal. They didn't know I was memorizing state legislation. 6 months passed. I was labeled non-threatening. They reduced my meds. I took them and kept reading. I wrote my thoughts in the margins of books I hid under my mattress. I reconstructed the hospital's timeline from memory. I diagrammed my legal argument on paper towels. But the turning point came the day Jamie slipped me a sealed envelope. "Someone mailed this here," he whispered. "No return address. I wasn't supposed to give it to you." I opened it with shaking hands. Inside, a photo of a little boy at a petting zoo, his cheeks, his eyes, my smile. And taped to the back, "I'll find a way to prove it. Stay alive. M. Melissa." She was still out there, still fighting for me. I looked at the photo for hours, slept with it in my pillowcase. And that night I made a vow: I will get out of here. I will learn every loophole, every precedent, every code they buried me with. And when I walk back into their world, I won't ask for my life back. I'll take it. On my 1-year mark, they approved my discharge. I packed 2 things. 1, the Bible I never read. 3, a notebook titled Carter Vav Carter, Dossier 1-4. Outside the gates, the world looked smaller than I remembered. I had no money, no legal license, no family left. But I had a plan. I moved into a halfway house under a different name, Eva Sinclair. Got a job as a receptionist at a small legal clinic. I made coffee, filed papers, smiled at lawyers who ignored me, but I watched, I listened, I learned. By month 3, I was helping the paralegals draft motions. By month 6, one of the senior partners, Clara Reynolds, noticed, "You're not just a receptionist, are you?" I met her eyes. "No, ma'am, I'm a mother." That was the first time I said it out loud in years. Clara invited me to intern with her on a custody case. I stayed late, asked questions no one else did. Eventually, I told her my story, not all of it, but enough. Clara didn't ask for proof. She just said, "If what you're saying is true, Evelyn, you don't just have a case, you have a reckoning." The next day, I pulled out the photo of my son and slid it across the desk. "I don't want revenge," I said. "I want restoration." She leaned back, fingers steepled. "Then let's start building it." Clara Reynolds moved fast. Within weeks of taking my case, she secured access to sealed hospital documents through a loophole involving medical whistleblower protections. That was how we found it. A neonatal transfer form signed by my husband and his sister Tamara, Carter Wentworth, requesting custody of a newborn boy due to the mother's permanent mental unfitness. My name wasn't even mentioned. They had erased me with 3 signatures and 1 lie. Tamara Jonathan's sister. She'd married into the Wentworth family. Old money, old power, old secrets. Her mansion was a fortress in the New Haven hills with iron gates and rose gardens that never seemed to die. Clara stared at the papers. "She didn't just steal your child, Evelyn. She manufactured your absence." I nodded hollow and gave him her last name. We found his new identity on page 5, Jackson W. Carter Wentworth, born the same day as my son. Same weight, same APGAR score. "My Julian." "I want to see him," I said. Clara hesitated. "If we alert them, they'll vanish. These people don't play fair. I won't alert them. I just want to see him just once." One Saturday morning, I dressed in muted colors and walked the length of Fairview Park in New Haven. Clara had given me a tip. Tamara often brought her son there on weekends, always surrounded by nannies, never without a camera crew lurking somewhere. I sat on a bench by the koi pond. 30 minutes passed. Then I saw him. He was running toward the pond, laughing, his curls bouncing in the breeze. I forgot how to breathe, Julian. His smile was exactly mine. He knelt by the edge, tossing crumbs to the fish. His nanny was distracted on her phone. I got up, took a few steps, and froze. Because from the other side of the path, Tamara approached, holding a designer sun hat and her perfect posture. Like weapons, sweetheart. She called time to go. Mommy has brunch. Julian looked up. Okay, Mommy, I stumbled back as if struck. He said it so naturally, so trustingly, Mommy, not me. I left the park before I could scream. In the car, Clara waited in silence. When I finally spoke, my voice was glass. She dressed him in blue. That's what I was going to name him, Julian Blue Carter. Clara didn't answer. She didn't need to. That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at the blank wall above my desk I had spent 3 years in silence. 1 year in study, 2 months in shadow. But now I had seen him. Now the pain had a face. Now the rage had form. I opened a fresh legal pad and wrote in thick black ink, Julian Carter, rightful custody petition filed by Evelyn C. Carter, biological mother, formally institutionalized, now legally competent. I wasn't going to play nice. I was going to file under my real name. I was done hiding. Clara warned me. They'll counterattack hard, I know. They'll smear you in the media. Let them. They'll try to revoke your rights before you can even present evidence. I'll beat them to it. She looked at me. You're ready? No. I said, I'm starving. We filed on a Monday. By Friday, the media exploded. Disgraced ex-wife of Jonathan Carter claims stolen. Baby. Mental patient tries to sue billionaire family for custody. Tamara Wentworth's shocking family scandal. They painted me as unstable, hysterical, dangerous, which is exactly what I wanted, because now they were on record. Now they were locked into public lies, and I was sitting on a mountain of truth. 1 week later, Clara got a call from a judge. Not just any judge, Judge Miriam Stone, a family court veteran, with a reputation for digging deeper when the truth smelled buried. She wants to hold a hearing, Clara said. Wants to see if there's enough for full custody proceedings. My hands trembled around the teacup, she'll see. On the morning of the hearing, I wore a navy blue dress with long sleeves, no jewelry, no makeup, just me. Tamara arrived in pearls and crocodile tears. Jonathan showed up late, flanked by lawyers who looked like they ate civil rights for breakfast. Judge Stone didn't look at anyone when she entered. She just opened the file. This is either the boldest fraud I've seen in years, she said flatly, or the greatest miscarriage of justice I've ever allowed to happen. Clara stood tall. We're not asking for headlines, we're asking for DNA. The judge leaned forward. Do you have it? Clara reached into her bag and pulled out the envelope. Inside a sealed report from 2 independent labs. Positive match 99%. Julian was mine. Tamara's face didn't move. Jonathan shifted in his seat. I felt my throat close, my knees lock, my fingers dug into the bench beneath me. Judge Stone looked up. We will schedule a formal custody trial. Until then, supervised visitation is granted to the petitioner. I didn't cry. I simply whispered, thank you. Because this time the system didn't bury me, it heard me. That night I stood outside Clara's office as the city pulsed in amber glow. Clara handed me a glass of water. First step done, she said. I stared at the courthouse dome across the street. No, I whispered. This wasn't the first step, that was when they lied. This is the first step back. The courtroom wasn't grand. There were no chandeliers, no sweeping marble arches, just wood and silence. But that silence felt different now. It wasn't the kind that buried me. It was the kind that waited. Clara walked beside me as we entered. She was calm. I was steel. To our left sat Tamara, still in pearls. Her team of attorneys were armed with folders, PR statements, and an emergency injunction waiting to be filed if things went south. To our right sat Jonathan. He hadn't spoken to me once since the hearing began. Not in words, but his eyes. They flicked toward me like someone seeing a ghost, because in his mind I had been buried. Judge Miriam Stone entered without a sound. Her presence was weight. It filled every corner of that courtroom. I've read the DNA results. She began tapping her gavel once. Now I want to hear the story behind them. Ms. Carter, you may begin. I stood. Not Evelyn the patient, not Evelyn the wife, Evelyn the mother. 5 years ago, I said, my voice level, I gave birth to a healthy baby boy. I never held him. I was told he died. I turned toward the defendants, but that wasn't the truth. The truth was taken, buried under forged documents and signatures I never gave. My child wasn't dead. He was stolen. One of Tamara's lawyers interrupted, Your Honor. This sounds more like a performance than a legal argument. Judge Stone raised a hand. She has the floor. Let her speak. I continued. I was institutionalized under false pretenses with evaluations written by doctors linked to the Carter Foundation. I was denied legal counsel, denied contact with outside family. Everything I am about to present is backed by documented evidence. I took a breath. Clara passed me the first binder, Exhibit A, original consent forms for neonatal transfer, signed under duress or outright forged. Exhibit B, billing records from Willow Grove Psychiatric Facility showing tampering and premature diagnoses. Exhibit C, whistleblower statements from hospital staff, and Exhibit D2, DNA tests confirming that Jackson Carter Wentworth is my biological son. A hush fell. Tamara blinked once Jonathan's knuckles turned white. Clara stood. We'd also like to submit supplemental testimony, recorded video from Melissa Green, former nurse at Fairway Medical Center. The judge nodded. The courtroom screen flickered on. Melissa appeared seated in a dim apartment. She looked directly at the camera. I was there the night Evelyn Carter gave birth. Her baby was alive. He was healthy. I saw the chart. I held him. I also saw a man, Jonathan Carter, signing documents behind closed doors with a woman named Tamara. Later that night, the baby was removed without standard protocol. She looked down. I wanted to come forward. Years ago, but I was threatened. I'm not afraid anymore. When the video ended, you could feel the court stop breathing. Judge Stone removed her glasses. I've seen a lot in 30 years, she said quietly. But rarely have I seen a betrayal this orchestrated. Tamara's team tried to counter. They painted me as unstable, pointed to past reports, old therapy notes. They said I was dangerous, delusional, emotionally unfit. But that was the wrong angle because I had learned their playbook. I took the stand once more when they institutionalized me. I didn't collapse. I learned, I studied, I educated myself in law to survive. I came here not as someone seeking pity, but as someone who now understands exactly how they use the system to destroy me. I paused. They taught me the law so I could use it better than them. By noon, even Tamara looked like she was unraveling. Her voice broke as she asked the judge for a recess. Judge Stone denied it. I've seen enough. She turned to me, Miss Carter. I'm awarding you temporary full custody pending a final review, effective immediately. Visitation with the defendants is suspended. I didn't flinch, but inside me, the flood broke. Jonathan rose, trying to object. I'm still his father. Judge Stone turned to him with a stare sharp as glass. You're lucky not to be facing criminal charges today. As the gavel fell, I felt every breath I'd held for 5 years finally leave my lungs. Not in a sob, not in a scream, but in silence. Because this time, I had won quietly. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered microphones, cameras, blinding lights. I didn't stop, but one reporter called out, Evelyn, how does it feel to be heard after all this time? I turned my head slightly. I wasn't trying to be heard. I said I was trying to be believed. That night, I stood in a small room with bookshelves and a single lamp. Julian was brought in by a child services agent. He looked at me like he was unsure I knelt. Hi, I whispered. I'm Evelyn. But a long time ago, I gave you a different name. He stared, then blinked, then asked softly, Do you know why I have a scar on my right hand? I nodded. You got it the night you were born. You grabbed my necklace before they took you away. He was silent. Then he walked into my arms. They thought it ended at custody. They thought once I had Julian, I'd fade back into obscurity, be grateful, be quiet. But they forgot one thing. I don't stop where justice begins. 3 months after the court ruling, I had full legal custody of my son, Julian. Yes, he kept the name that they gave him. For now, he needed time, and I gave it to him. We moved into a small townhouse 2 counties away, quiet private walls painted in soft greens and warm grays. He liked astronomy, it turned out. He slept with a blanket patterned in stars, but sometimes he'd ask questions. Why did Tamara lie to me? Was Daddy ever nice to you? Why didn't you come sooner? And every time I gave him the truth, not the brutal kind, the kind a child can hold without it cutting their hands. I came when I was strong enough to never let them take you again. Meanwhile, I had other plans. Plans I had been building in silence since the day they buried me alive. Jonathan Carter and Associates was a massive real estate holding company, on the surface clean beneath filthy fake tenants, internal billing fraud, land seizures buried under redevelopment plans, and through Tamara's husband's firm they'd laundered land into political donations. Clara and I built a case not for public court but for market strategy because now I wasn't the desperate wife. I was the silent investor behind Luxol Properties, a tech-based REIT that began quietly acquiring shares in the Carter portfolio. Small lots first, then development tracts, then failed subsidiaries, each acquisition, legal public undeniable. Jonathan didn't notice until the day Luxol outbid him on his own flagship project. He called the CEO, demanding to speak. She transferred him to me. I didn't say hello. I let him hear my breath. Then I whispered, You stole a child to protect your name. I stole your legacy to give him one. Then I hung up. 1 week later, the board of Carter and Associates called an emergency meeting. They had no idea that the controlling shares had been consolidated under Luxol's umbrella, And they really had no idea that I walked into that meeting not as Evelyn Carter, but as Evelyn Sinclair, CEO of the company that now owned them. The room went silent. Tamara blinked, like she'd seen a ghost. Jonathan's lips moved, but made no sound. Took the seat at the head of the table. Effective today, I said. All Carter assets are under internal audit. Any fraudulent activity discovered will be prosecuted fully. One board member asked, "And under what authority are you making this declaration?" I smiled and slid the stock certificate across the table. Signed, sealed, publicly traded. I was the authority. I didn't fire them. Not immediately. I wanted them to watch, to witness how a woman they discarded built a clean empire from their rotten foundation. Within 60 days, the Carter brand was dissolved. Its assets folded into a new holding structure, name legacy, of Light Foundation. Its mission to provide legal aid and housing for women who lost custody through unlawful means, to rebuild where others were erased. I put Julian's name on the charter. We celebrated the launch on the rooftop of the foundation's new headquarters. Julian stood beside me in a black suit, blinking against the city lights. "Mom," I turned. He held a small envelope. "I want to change my name," he said. I opened it. Julian Blue Carter. No hyphens, no titles. "Just truth, are you sure?" I asked. He nodded. "It's who I am. You told me I was born under stars." My throat tightened. "You were—" That night, as guests filtered out, Tamara stood at the edge of the lobby, watching. She didn't approach. She didn't smile. Just watched. I walked toward her heels, clicking like hammers. "You lost a child you never truly had," I said. Her voice was thin. "He called me mother for years, and now he calls you memory." I didn't wait for a response. Julian and I drove home in silence. Halfway there, he asked, "Why didn't you destroy them completely?" Some looked at him through the mirror. "Because fire is fast," I said. "But legacy. Legacy is permanent." When we got home, he pulled his astronomy book from his bag and sat at the kitchen table. He opened it to the first page. There was a sticky note inside. I hadn't written it. It was from Melissa. "You lit a match in hell and walked out with light. I'll never forget that, M." I didn't cry. Not until later, when Julian fell asleep beside me with his arms wrapped around my waist, kissed the top of his head and whispered, "You were never lost, just hidden, and now you shine."